I agree with you, David Colon. I surely hope Fury doesn't fight Manuel Charr either. I hope everybody's off to a great start this week. We have a lot of boxing to discuss. And thank you, by the way, David, for showing up early, man. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss. There are no upcoming fights, but in the world of boxing, there is certainly a lot that we need to cover, from recapping last weekend's action to a lot of the news that's been breaking recently, just over the past few days. There's a lot of news in several different divisions that we need to get to. Obviously, well, the biggest story coming out of the weekend, well, you could argue it's either the Joyce victory over Parker or the Shakur Stevenson missing weight, then, you know, going to lightweight and before doing so, beating Hobson Conceicao. But I feel like Joyce and the statement that he made against Joseph Parker is pretty much the main story that needs to be tackled. Stan Tucker, what is going on? Thank you for coming through. Yeah, thank you. Did you catch the fight yet? I'll ask you. I know I've been asking you throughout the week. I don't know if you've caught Joyce versus Joseph Parker just yet, but yeah, that's pretty much the talk of the town right now. It has shaken up the heavyweight division, and I will be giving spoilers, obviously. So we're going to get into Joyce Parker. We're going to talk Shakur Stevenson, obviously, and his win over Hobson Conceicao, as well as him missing weight, what that means, and his move to 135 lightweight and what we should expect, especially in the near future. Of course, we love all of the names that we see in terms of potential opponents for Shakur Stevenson, but we also have to be realistic in terms of who we could possibly see him matched up against in the near future. We're talking, you know, beginning of 2023 throughout the year 2023. Jay Foreman is in the house. What's going on? What is good? Thank you for coming through. MAW. Heck yeah. Thank you for coming through. Good to see y'all. Yeah. I've gotten some of your guys' opinion on that Joyce versus Joseph Parker fight, but I definitely want to dig into it a bit more. Yeah, thank you, MAW. Hit that like, folks. So yeah, we're going to talk Joyce Parker. We're going to talk Shakur Stevenson. We're going to talk a little Maxie Hughes against Kid Galahad. People weren't as fired up about that fight over the weekend. I think it was somewhat significant just because Hughes is one of those guys who's kind of rebuilt his career. He had a few, early losses, and it looks like against Liam Walsh, amongst others. Liam Walsh, you might remember, Javonte Davis went over to the UK, knocked him out with, within a few rounds. So Maxie Hughes has actually made a pretty impressive turnaround career-wise. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. If we have time, we're going to get to the Floyd Mayweather exhibition. I don't know if you guys saw that. I know that many of you who saw it probably aren't, thrilled about the idea of a lot of these exhibitions, not to mention is Floyd Mayweather fighting Asakura, who's an MMA fighter under the Ryzen banner. I'm sure that, a lot of people are not fired up about that, but I actually saw that particular exhibition as being pretty entertaining. So if we have time, we're going to get to that a little bit. Lance Pugmire, I don't know if you guys saw, I think it was, he's with Fight Hub or Fight Hype. I don't want to attribute him to the wrong, outlet. I know he used to be with The Athletic, and him and Mike Coppinger had a really good podcast called the Pug and Cop Boxing Show or something like that. But Lance Pugmire was giving a report, and it was an update on Spence versus Crawford, and he was basically saying that Terrence Crawford's possible ties to, cartel leader, who was involved deeply in boxing with the MTK promotion, Daniel Kinahan, that was something that PBC and Al Heyman wanted to shore up before moving forward. Remember, that is supposedly or reportedly the reason, Tommy Fury wasn't able to get into the United States to fight Jake Paul. Tyson Fury, from what I've read, may be unable to enter the U.S. You guys might know more information about that, but, it said the Daniel Kinahan was a mega event in boxing, the takedown of that cartel that he's tied to and supposedly one of the leaders of, essentially. But MTK Global had relationships with Probellum, and we saw a lot of fighters from Regis Prograis and several others signing recently, just over the past year, with Probellum. So that whole outlet has kind of been on pause. Well, according to Lance Pugmire's reporting, it sounds like one of the holdups to Spence versus Crawford, which we still have not gotten an announcement. And that's really worrying me, because if we're talking about a November fight, when ESPN came out with the story that the terms had more or less been agreed to, that was like perfect timing for that fight to be made, because you still get the full promotional, duration to be able to take care of that. Now we're in late September, so I'm really worried about the possibility of that fight not happening. Certainly not in November. I'd be very surprised if they announce, like, at the end of this week that the fight is still taking place in November. Like, the clock is really ticking on that one, and it's pretty frustrating. But yeah, if you haven't seen Lance Pugmire, just type in Lance Pugmire, Spence Crawford, and you'll see his reporting on that one. It's kind of interesting. We're going to talk, one of the things that broke was Oscar Valdez. His return to the ring is going to be postponed because he's suffered an injury. They didn't disclose, at least upon the time that I read it, what that injury is, but it looks like they're going to push his return to the ring back a couple of months. Jody High Roller, thank you for that. What's up, Jody High Roller? Thank you for coming through. I always like talking music with you as much as talking boxing with you. Naya Inoue versus Paul Butler. That fight is now official, and I believe is going to take place in November. So that's going to be a battle for undisputed in the bantamweight division. That's basically Naya Inoue, one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the sport. That's his last loose end to tie up before hopefully and probably inevitably moving to 122. Hopefully to fight the likes of, Stephen Fulton. Brandon Figueroa has since moved up to 126. But Angelo Leo. There's some good fighters at 122 who I would love to see Naya Inoue fight when he eventually leaves bantamweight. But first, he's got to grab that last belt, and the man holding it is Paul Butler. Brandon Jackson is in the house. Thank you. Thank you for coming through. Salute. Heck yeah. Yeah, Inoue should walk away with that one, right? Like, just in terms of what we've seen from both of these guys in the ring, Naya Inoue appears to be the superior fighter. And, I mean, man, the way that he got Nonito Donaire out of there, that was, jarring. Like, I set my alarm clock, my phone. I don't know if alarm clocks are still a thing, but, I woke up super early, like 3 o'clock in the morning on a work day, so I could watch that Naya Inoue versus Nonito Donaire fight. And I'm not going to say I was disappointed. I mean, we saw, what had to happen happened, or what was meant to happen happened. And yeah, Naya Inoue is just looking, he's just looking like boxing gold right now with his combination of speed, power, boxing IQ. He is just an absolute handful at bantamweight. So we'll see if he's able to unify and become undisputed at 118 before moving up. Son of Apollo is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, I know I reached out to you not too long ago. Thank you for coming through on short notice, too. By the way, Gervonta Davis, legal issues. It looks like he was trying to cop a plea deal to avoid jail time, right? So this is from a 2020 offense. This was shortly after his knockout win over Leo Santa Cruz. He was involved in a reported or alleged hit and run. So it looks like he's going to have to go to court for that. So I don't expect any match to be made with Gervonta Tank Davis, at least not in the next several weeks. It's pretty unfortunate. I mean, if he did commit this crime and jail time is what they hand down, then it is what it is. You've got to do your time. But it looks like, what a lot of high-profile people are able to do is to cop a plea and to avoid jail time altogether. But it looks like the judge said, And it looks like this one has to head to court. And we'll see, what information comes out and how that is dealt with legally. But as far as I see it, Gervonta Davis's career is temporarily put on pause. Unfortunately for boxing fans, but societally, I can't say unfortunately, because if you did the crime, then if the time is issued, you got to do it. Josh Warrington versus Alberto Luis Lopez is now, I don't know if it's official, but if it's not official, it's the one step away from being official. So it looks like the two-time IBF featherweight champion, Josh Warrington, whose only career loss is via vicious knockout to Mauricio Lara, it looks like his next match is set. And again, it's against Alberto Lopez. We're going to, definitely do a preview as we near the fight date. It's not the best fight. I would have much rather have seen him fight either, Lee Wood, somebody on PBC like Ray Vargas, or even Mark Magsayo. Hell, I ideally want to see him run it back with Mauricio Lara. Yes, they try to run it back after, again, Lara KO'd Warrington, but it was cut short due to a cut to the eyebrow. Vicious cut. Multiple headbutts in that fight. A lot of people speculate that Josh Warrington was leading with his head. And, in fairness, if you look at a lot of Josh Warrington's fights, whether you're talking about his fight against Kid Galahad, who also fought last weekend, lost a close fight to Maxie Hughes, or his fight when he won the title against Lee Selby, there was an early clash of heads, which led to Lee Selby being cut. And then Josh Warrington came on strong. So I want to be delicate when I talk about somebody intentionally headbutting. Sometimes it's the style that leads to the headbutt. But let's just say there's a track record of Josh Warrington fights containing a lot of head clashes. And it's not like he's a southpaw, which that's a natural thing, orthodox versus southpaw. But yeah, his next fight is scheduled. It's against a pretty good fighter. I think that, I think that this fighter, I'll put it like this. I think that Alberto Lopez, who has long kind of been knocking at the door for a title shot, I do think that he's going to be more competitive than Kiko Martinez was. And that's the guy who Josh Warrington just beat to reclaim the IBF belt, even though it probably should have been Mauricio Lara, who was getting that title opportunity. But he's about to get his title opportunity whenever Lee Wood's bicep is healed. But that's who Mauricio Lara is going to get his title shot against. Also, Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. This has gotten a little bit frustrating. At first, it was kind of funny the way that they were, kind of negotiating online. Tyson Fury was absolutely comical in the way that he was calling Anthony Joshua out. But see, he set like a hard date on the deadline that he would allow Anthony Joshua to agree to the fight. So he's basically online on Twitter doing Instagram doing the story saying, AJ, sign the contract. Sorry about that. Sign the contract, and as one day passes, another day passes, you hear and see the different statements being issued out by Eddie Hearn of Matchroom, representing and promoting AJ, and Frank Warren, Tyson Fury's longtime chief promoter. And Eddie Hearn is saying, we're down to do this, but it involves a process. Right? So this isn't something where you say, hey, sign it by Monday or else, and it gets done, especially a fight of this magnitude, which, could take place anywhere from, the biggest, what's the biggest stadium right now in the UK? Is it Wembley, the O2? It could just a massive fight. It could take place in Wales, in the biggest, stadium over there. Or it would be more likely that it takes place in the Middle East, since the Saudis and the Emirates, they're known to throw a lot of money at these big events. So it's not something that you could just say, what, are you scared? Sign the contract, and the guy signs it, and then, it's done. So it sounds like there's a lot of, contractual jousting between parties. And not only Eddie Hearn was saying that, but Frank Warren, Tyson Fury's promoter, was saying, yeah, it's not that simple. It's not like sign the contract and even, and it gets done. So it didn't get done by the Monday that Tyson Fury stipulated. And so now, even though both Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, the two promoters involved here, are saying we are working in good faith to get this fight done. We want this fight done. Eddie Hearn says, we want this fight done. But now Tyson Fury, since it wasn't agreed to on his terms at his super arbitrary deadline, he's now saying the deal's off. Deal's off. And now he's saying that he wants to fight, what, can we call him a journeyman these days? Manuel Char, who was kind of a heavyweight contender at a time. He fought Vitaly Klitschko not Vladimir, but Vitaly Klitschko, like 10 years ago. He's been knocked out by Klitschko, been knocked out by Alexander Povetkin. He's fought some pretty good fighters. He was knocked out by Maris Bridis, the former cruiserweight champion. So Manuel Charr, he's been a heavyweight, been a decent heavyweight. I think he recently beat like Ustinov, who's, you know, one of those journeyman level guys. So he's a heavyweight, but he's not an A-level heavyweight. He's not an A- B+ level heavyweight. So this is not a guy who anybody wants to see Tyson Fury fight. And David Colon dropped the first comment of this chat saying he came in here like, you know, well before the chat started and just dropped the comment saying, I surely hope Fury doesn't fight Charr. And I feel you on that. I don't want him to fight Manuel Charr either. You know, I begin to wonder, and a lot of people were wondering this, if Tyson Fury was even negotiating in good faith, or if he just put that proposal out there, knowing that the terms couldn't be agreed to realistically within the time frame given, and then basically have probable, you know, plausible cause or plausible deniability to be able to exit that negotiation. I don't like that at all. You know, and nothing against Tyson Fury as a fighter, but you know, when you saw Eddie Hearn say, I'm down, and Anthony Joshua respond in kind saying, let's do it, and then you, Tyson Fury, pull out, and everybody still wants the fight to go through. Everybody who's paying attention sees that the promoters are still trying to get this done, and then you, Tyson Fury, the A side, is the one who wants to take it off the table to then pivot and fight Manuel Charr. You know, the more information that comes out about this, you know, I would say bad faith negotiation, the more Tyson Fury's sales job isn't going to work with the boxing public. It might work with the casual fans who see him online and, you know, him barking his demands and, you know, negotiating like that. But for those who have more information to work with, it doesn't appear genuine. Let's see. Jay Foreman said, even the dog is frustrated at this fight. Yeah, exactly. Any fight involving Fury needs to be seen to be believed. Yeah, and Tyson Fury kind of has a history of, you know, kind of the bait and switch and, you know, saying one fighter's name to kind of keep his name in the press and then use that to leverage your next fight against somebody totally different. We've seen this from Tyson Fury. I think that, you know, I don't think Tyson Fury versus AJ is going to happen in 2022. You know, within the next, 3 months? I don't see that as being likely. It's possible. I don't see it as being likely. I think it's more likely that we get a, you know, like an in-between. You know how Tyson Fury usually does between big fights? Like after his long retirement, he came back and fought Sefer Seferi and one other, and then fought Wilder the first time. After the first fight with Wilder, he came back and fought Tom Schwartz after signing with Top Rank, and then he fought Otto Wallin, who, yes, that is a win that ages well. Otto Wallin needs a big fight, by the way. I mean, what the hell is that? What have we really seen from him since that impressive performance against Fury? I think he fought one other named guy. Might have been Christian Hammer or somebody like that. But, you know, Tyson Fury, when at the time that he made that Otto Wallin fight, it's not like anybody saw that as a threat. Most people didn't know who Otto Wallin was. It's only after the fight that you see, Wallin is pretty good, that then that win ages well. But yeah, that wasn't a meaningful fight when it was scheduled, and I think that it's more likely than not that we get that type of a level of opponent from Tyson Fury next. Let's see. Yeah, Stan Tucker, you're right. Manuel Charr was knocked out by everyone who was a real someone that he fought. Growth through calisthenics. Hey, what's going on? Thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. Yeah, good to hear from you. Ventru, thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. Brandon Jackson says, shame on me for slightly getting my hopes up about AJ versus Fury in December. Hey, you're not the only one. Lisa Tucker. Hey, that's my sister in the house. Lisa Tucker, thank you for coming through. She said, my memory is amazing. Oh, man. I miss you, Lisa. Love you. Brendan Jackson, I agree with you, man. Like, you know, I didn't release any content about the possible fight, but I did against Spence Crawford, so who's the fool, right? And you know, I saw that channels that I like, and even channels that are very deliberate on what they release. For instance, Boxing Wave, he won't release something on based on speculation, right? And I like the fight to either be made or for there to be like actual progressive steps and a strong likelihood that the fight gets made, as I thought we saw from, you know, Spence Crawford nearly 2 weeks ago now, right? We got our hopes up then. But, you know, with Fury and AJ, and with Fury specifically, maybe it's because I saw how demonstrative he was in his call out, and then I saw AJ pick up the phone and say, yeah, let's do it. And then I saw Eddie Hearn on IFL TV, which is one of the outlets that he likes to interview with, as well as his the DAZN boxing show with Ak and Barak. Eddie Hearn was on both of those platforms saying, hey, we're trying to get this done. You know, they sent me over a contract. It was all over the place, but we're going to work through it. We're going to work through it was the message. And now Tyson Fury wants to pull that one off the table. And I feel like we're all being played for the fool to some degree. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that that fight gets made because, I mean, come on, that would be like a Christmas present for boxing fans, right? If on short notice, just, you know, shortly after AJ loses his rematch to Alexander Usyk, that we then get Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua in the same calendar year that Tyson Fury knocks out Dillian White with an uppercut. Oh man, like yeah, I hope that it gets made. I'm very skeptical. So really quickly, it looks like the WBA made, or didn't make yet, but they mandated a WBA consolidation at middleweight between Triple G, who's coming off of a decision, a wide decision loss against Canelo Alvarez, versus Erislandy Lara, the former 154-pound champion. I was thinking about whether he was a multiple-time champion, but I think he only held the one of the major belts at 154 once. Damn, one of the fights that Erislandy Lara's legacy could have really stood like and improved if he won that fight was against Jarrett Hurd. That was kind of a classic. Not classic in the sense that everybody was watching the fight, but in the quality of fighters and the quality of fight that you got, Hurd versus Lara was spectacular. And Lara almost won the fight, but that he would be talking about Hall of Fame, I think, potentially, if he won that fight against Jarrett Hurd. But it looks like 40-year-old Triple G is going to be taking on 40-year-old Erislandy Lara to pretty much square away the two WBA belts at middleweight. And my early thoughts are, you know, stylistically, if Lara wasn't 40 years old, that, you know, he could be the type of fighter that could present a problem for Triple G. Maybe even present a problem for Triple G a few years back. Maybe. But at this stage, I feel like Triple G still has more of a judge-friendly style. Even though Lara's sitting in the pocket a lot more, I think Triple G wins that fight. I'm hesitant to take Triple G via knockout or stoppage, though, at this stage. Let's see. MAW said, nah, you wrong, Wood. Tyson Fury's playing us. The AJ talk was BS. Char instead. Yeah, in my humble opinion. You know, that's more than likely. And Manuel Char, though, I feel like there's so many other heavyweights you could pick a fight with. Yeah, I would rather see a third fight, quite frankly, between Tyson Fury and Derek Chisora. There are so many, you know, I get if he doesn't want to fight like a top 5 heavyweight. He probably doesn't want to fight Joyce, not right now at least. And we're going to get to that. But Tyson Fury, you know, I'm trying to think of all the fighters you could choose from. Zhang Zhe Li, but maybe even that is a tier above what Tyson Fury is looking for right now. But you've got guys like Dimitrenko. If he wants to fight a older fighter, you know, Luis Ortiz would probably do it. Christian Hammer, he's always good for fighting. You know, he's just down to fight anybody, it seems. Christian Hammer. But yeah, if we get Manuel Char, like, my opinion of him right now, like, I mean, look, I respect everybody who steps in the ring, but just, I look at him as being like a C+, C level fighter on the elite level, you know, Manuel Char. B- at best. Brandon Jackson thinks Triple G stops Lara. You know, that's very possible. Lara doesn't move like he used to, and that is one of the first things to go is your legs and your ability to, you know, have durable legs over the course of, you know, in this case, 12 rounds. It's just a lot to ask for from a 40-year-old. And, you know, we started seeing Erislandy Lara, I think, slow down around the time, perhaps, of the, you know, the fight against Jarrett Hurd. But definitely after that, you know, when he fought that draw against Brian Castano, he wasn't moving around as much. But, I mean, he had to move around a bit just because Brian Castano is such a pressure-style fighter. But definitely in his most recent fights against Cornflake Lamana and his most recent one against Gary Spike O'Sullivan, it's a totally different Erislandy Lara. But hey, the fact that he's able to kind of sit in there and get fighters out of there, that just shows you how many layers there were to his game when he was in his prime. He had more power, I think, than people gave him credit for. And, you know, fights like his, his knockout against Yuri Foreman, remember that? Fights like that. And I think he did, I know, was it Alfredo Angulo? I know he dropped Austin Trout. But yeah, Erislandy Lara, I feel, has more power than advertised. But I still don't think at this stage he has enough to take on even or beat a 40-year-old Triple G. Let's see. Imagine Fury calls out Frank Sanchez to prove he could squash a mover, if only. Yeah, that would be pretty nice. Frank Sanchez, to me, appears to be one of those heavyweights, you know, like Philip Ergovich before he fought Zhang Jie Li. He seems to be one of those heavyweights that is kind of avoided. And he's fighting with the PBC right now, right? So there's no shortage of quality heavyweights over there. We'll see who they match make against Frank Sanchez going forward. But he's due to, is he scheduled to fight yet? I don't think he has an opponent scheduled, if I'm not mistaken. Let me know if you know differently, though. AJ, or just wait for Usyk, please. Yeah, because that's the thing. Usyk's going to be ready, him and his team said. I mean, he just got done beating AJ. He left the Ukraine, you know, his war-torn Ukraine, to fight Anthony Joshua in a super meaningful fight. I'm thinking, give the guy a few months. I mean, damn. Like, he just went, you know, 12 rounds with Anthony Joshua. Can we give him, give him like a calendar quarter? Like, Tyson Fury he's making demands that he himself would not adhere to. He wouldn't take on a level of fight like that, something that's that difficult where, yes, Alexander Usyk might look like he comes out of this fight unscathed, but you never know what those underlying injuries are. In fact, he did say that he was injured. He didn't, I don't think he specified what the injury was, but all these guys come out of 12 rounders totally banged up. So give the 35-year-old Usyk some time, you know? He's back in the UK, in the Ukraine. And the thing is, if Fury does fight again this calendar year, that just moves the Fury versus Usyk Battle of Undisputed further along in 2023. Like, we wouldn't get that fight until like May or June at the earliest. And I could see a whole bunch of excuses being made at that point to then take on other opponents instead of fighting for Undisputed. So, you know, and Usyk, after Joe Joyce's performance against Joseph Parker, which, again, we're going to get to that, but Usyk might have to handle a mandatory before, you know, the stars align with him and Tyson Fury, if Tyson Fury is to take on another fight this calendar year. QT is in the house. Thank you for coming through. And he's the one who said, AJ, or just wait for Usyk, please. And I don't know. I said he. I don't know if QT is he or she. I'm sorry, QT, if you're not he. But yeah, AJ, just wait for that one, or against Usyk. And then he said, have you seen Wilder's team pandering for another Fury fight in interviews? You know, I wonder about that. I wonder if Wilder actually really wants another fight with Tyson Fury. Look, as a fan of Deontay Wilder, I'm not sure that I want it. You know, like, what he went through in that trilogy, put it like this. Some fighters have a resume that is Hall of Fame worthy. Yes, Wilder was a WBC champion for 5 years, right? And then he has that trilogy fight with Tyson Fury. He loses his belt in the second of those 3 fights. But sometimes, even if your best wins, which Wilder's 2 best wins are against who? Luis Ortiz. His next best performance would probably be that draw, right? If you got a draw against Tyson Fury on your record, that kind of moves you a little bit closer to Hall of Fame talk, right? So he's a WBC champ for 5 years, fights a draw with Tyson Fury, a bona fide Hall of Famer. We'll see what Wilder does going forward. If he's not yet a Hall of Famer, which some could argue that he is, and there's an argument to be made. Like, look, there are a lot of fighters who are in the Hall of Fame that I personally don't think should be in the Hall of Fame. It's not as difficult a threshold as the baseball Hall of Fame. Stan Tucker, aka Dad, said Wilder Hall of Fame. Hey, Wilder just issued a statement last week saying, hey, I am a Hall of Famer, no questions asked. And look, fighters can say anything that they want, right? But there are a lot of media members who would put Deontay Wilder in the Hall of Fame. Yes, he was a champion for 5 years. He held one belt. He didn't unify multiple belts. But again, after his 2 wins against Luis Ortiz, Tyson Fury trilogy aside, what are his biggest accomplishments? Beating Bermane Stiverne twice? Beating Chris Arreola? Beating, who's that guy who gets knocked out by all the good fight? Artur Szpilka, beating him. There are not too many good wins on his resume. But it's like, the thing is, the WBC, like other sanctioning bodies, when they have a belt position with a certain promoter, it's like they're able to keep that belt circulating on that one platform. So there is no pressure from the sanctioning body to say, no, you got to fight this guy over here at Top Rank or over here on the Zone. They usually are cool with keeping the belt in-house unless something crazy happens and, somebody else wins it in a vacant title bout, something like that. Look, perfect example. Gary Russell Jr. was a champion for 5 years. The guys that he was defending against weren't great fighters or weren't seen to be like the other elite featherweights. Yes, the win against Jojo Diaz and maybe King Tug Niambiar, maybe some of those wins age well. Kiko Martinez is another one. But at the time those matches were made, nobody was thrilled about Gary Russell Jr. versus Kiko Martinez at the time that it was made. We were thinking, damn, when is Gary Russell Jr. going to fight somebody who matters? Josh Warrington, Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton, somebody like that. Well, Wilder holding that WBC belt for 5 years, it looks impressive on paper. But when you look at what his fight schedule was, there's much more to that than meets the eye. Let's see. Sector Roblox said, thank you for coming through, Sector Roblox. I reached out to you a little earlier today. Heck yeah. Who would you pick in Triple G versus Chris Eubank Jr. right now? I think I would still pick Triple G. There's something about the way Chris Eubank Jr., who's about to fight Conor Benn in 2 weeks, very weird fight. I'm going to do a preview on that one in a few days, but it's going to be basically a 160 fighter against a 147 fighter at a 157-pound catch weight. Chris Eubank, even in his fight against Liam Williams, I felt like his activity level tapered way too much in the latter half of that fight. To make me think that we saw how Triple G started surging in the second half against Canelo Alvarez. As lopsided as that loss was, he looked decent from rounds 8 or maybe 9 through 12. And I think that his consistency, minute over minute, even though Chris Eubank Jr. has power and he flashes really nice hand speed, he's too one or two punch at a time, where he'll it's feast or famine. He's either not throwing anything or he throws 1 or 2 flashy punches, then goes back to not throwing anything. I feel like Triple G's pace will still win more rounds against Chris Eubank than Chris Eubank will be able to win with his kind of flashy punching style. He's a little bit Jean Pascal-like in his feast or famine, punch. We'll call it episodic punching, to borrow a term from online boxing analyst Richard Dwyer. Episodic. I think that there's too much of that going on with Chris Eubank Jr. to win against Triple G. QT said, Wilder, I'm a fan, but he's not a Hall of Famer. Resume-wise, I agree with you. I feel like, there's kind of like a split public on that one. But I think that if most people look hard at the fight-by-fight resume, yes, that trilogy against Tyson Fury was a classic. And you know what? Quite frankly, that trilogy, not because I said so, but because of the way the writers look at the significance of that trilogy, that might put it over the top. Here's the thing. Like Anthony Joshua, probably a Hall of Famer, right? Maybe, probably. I think maybe. I think he might be a little closer to Hall of Fame than Deontay Wilder, just because he's beaten, Alexander Povetkin, Joseph Parker, Dillian White. He's got more high level wins than Deontay Wilder. But where he messed up was he didn't find a way to agree to a fight with Deontay Wilder when they were both undefeated knockout kings. So what happened? The most relevant story of the heavyweight division was the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder story. That one feels like it goes down in the history book. And yes, Anthony Joshua fought those two fights with Alexander Usyk, lost them both. And it's kind of messed up because Fury pulled out of what was supposed to be a Fury versus AJ fight. Remember that? And at the time, that would have been a battle, I believe, for undisputed. But then Deontay Wilder activated his rematch clause. And so I feel like the rug was pulled from underneath Anthony Joshua, because what he thought was going to be a battle for undisputed against Tyson Fury ended up being, hey, that fight is off the table. He's got to handle business against Deontay Wilder. Now you've got to fight Alexander Usyk. You're mandatory. That was the worst thing that could have happened, just luck-wise, for Anthony Joshua. Yeah, let me turn this on real quick, see if that's better. We're losing a little bit of light here. Ventru said, I would give Wilder the Westbrook treatment, only would consider for Hall of Fame because of his impressive streak. Yeah, it's hard to deny Russell Westbrook, and I'm not going to talk too much NBA. I love basketball and the NBA, but Russell Westbrook, he did something. He had 3 seasons in a row where he had triple doubles. Nobody was doing triple doubles and averaging a triple double since like the 1950s. So Russell Westbrook, based on All-Star appearances, probably all NBA appearances, and his statistical outlier streak, would probably get him in the Hall of Fame. Brendan Jackson said Triple G would eventually KO Eubanks. Oh, really? Late KO. So I haven't seen Eubanks in big trouble, even in his losses. He only has 2 losses. One against George Groves, which he was fighting at 168. I don't look at Chris Eubank Jr. as being at his best at 168. But he fought George Groves in that tournament, and he lost via decision. Pretty competitive fight. And then he lost earlier, a few years prior to that, to a then undefeated and longtime undefeated Billy Joe Saunders. Another very close decision win. Sector Roblox said, what about Jermall Charlo versus Triple G? That was a fight I've been wanting to see for years. It's really unfortunate how Jermall Charlo's career at 160 is playing out. Right now, I would say Jermall Charlo, if Jermall Charlo is able to come back from his back injury, which we have no idea really how he's going to come back from that. But if he is still 100% Jermall Charlo, if he's the Jermall Charlo that fought Sergey Derevianchenko in 2020, I think it was like September of 2020, I think I might favor that Jermall Charlo against Triple G right now. 3 years ago, I would have gone Triple G. But right now, maybe Jermall Charlo, but again, he's got an injury to battle back from. Let's see. Stan Tucker, you said he beat Vlad. Which Vlad? You saying Deontay Wilder beat Vlad? Grow Through Calisthenics said Westbrook is one of the most overrated players of all time. There's a lot of talk about his career, especially since he's played for the Lakers. But people have been critical about his ability to make his team better for years. So, yeah, I see that. I think he's talented as hell. And, I'm out in L.A., so maybe I'm partially biased because he went to UCLA, and that's Stan Tucker, my dad's alma mater, UCLA. So maybe I'm a little pro Russell Westbrook, perhaps. But I get your argument. Jay Foreman said the heavyweight undisputed fight is cursed. Yeah, anyone's guess when it'll happen. And the thing is, there are so many different things that could happen to throw a potential battle for undisputed off. Like if a heavyweight has a mandatory that they refuse to fight, and then they vacate that one belt. Well, now you've got 3 different sections of heavyweight championships, right? Right now we've had 2, and we've been lucky to have only 2 for some time, but we still haven't been able to get that together. Lewis Isaacs, boxing. Hey, thank you for coming through. He's from Great Britain, or at least I saw the Union Jack flag in one of the comments. I see GB in the other one. So are you England, or are you just the wider, broader UK, where it could be Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, or Great Britain? Yeah, well, either way, welcome. So another thing that another piece of news that just crossed was Demetrius Andre. They did the purse bid. Check it out. He left his belt, his WBO belt, at 160. Went up to 168 because he wasn't about to fight Janibek Alim Kanuli. I think I got that right. But he didn't want to fight the new boogeyman at 160. So he goes up to 168, and there was an initial purse bid earlier this year. And it's for like a few $1 million. I think, I forgot who won it. Maybe Frank Warren won it for like 1.6 or 1 point something million. Maybe as high as 3. Either way, Demetrius Andre was supposed to make over $1 million to fight Zach Parker in a 168-pound WBO interim title shot. So that puts you in line at 168 for one of Canelo's belts. So if Andre wins that, he's basically Canelo's mandatory. Canelo could either fight him or not fight him, but if he doesn't fight him, he'll eventually have to vacate, which would then at least make Demetrius Andre, believe it or not, a 3-division champion. He held the belt at 154, held the belt at 160 for a pretty long time, and he would then hold the belt at 168 if Canelo doesn't fight the mandatory, right? So Demetrius Andre suffers an injury. He has to pull out of that fight. So that was supposed to be a $1 million plus payday. They do another purse bid once his shoulder injury heals up. But this time, nobody shows up to the purse bid except for Frank Warren. He bids just above the minimum. So he bids like $300,000. And Demetrius Andre is supposed to make 60% of that. So Zach Parker gets 40%, Demetrius Andre gets 60%. And Frank Warren wins the bid. So after being set to fight for over $1 million against Zach Parker, Demetrius Andre's new purse is like $160-something thousand. That is less than 20% of what he was going to make after the initial purse bid before getting injured. So what does Demetrius Andre do? He pulls out of the fight. He's like, thanks, but no thanks. So he's not even going to be the WBO mandatory. So Zach Parker needs a new opponent. Demetrius Andre needs a new opponent. They're talking about a possibility that the WBC might make David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andre for a mandatory or an interim belt. David Benavidez is a 2-time champion at WBC at 168 for the WBC belt. He's lost the title twice. He's never lost a fight. He lost because he was doing cocaine, and he lost because he missed weight before a title defense against Romer Angulo. So Demetrius Andre versus David Benavidez would be great for us fight fans. I would love that fight. And to be honest, it almost seems a little bit fitting. You've got David Benavidez, who's much younger than Andre. Andre's 34. David Benavidez is still super young, like either in his mid or even early 20s, like 24, 25 years old, something like that. But nobody wants to fight David Benavidez. Nobody really seems to want to fight. Well, nobody with a name wants to fight Demetrius Andre. Zach Parker does. Janibek Alim Kanuli at 160 does. But nobody with a name and something to lose, like a belt or something, wants to fight Demetrius Andre. So it feels fitting, because both of these guys are seemingly ducked to a degree, that Benavidez versus Andre for the WBC interim or mandatory position kind of makes sense. It sucks that it has to work out like that for Demetrius Andre, but hey, you're going to 160. You could either fight the best or you could not fight the best. But at some point, you've got to take something. You've got to take something if you're Demetrius Andre, because the clock's ticking and luck just is not going his way. I mean, again, he went from making over almost $2 million for this upcoming fight against Zach Parker, or what was supposed to be the upcoming fight against Zach Parker, to making less than $200,000. I get why he pulled out of that one. And I see people on Twitter criticizing Demetrius Andre for pulling out of that particular fight. To me, that's unfair and unreasonable. Julius Armstrong says Demetrius Andre TKOs Zach Parker. But see, the thing is, I don't think anybody of Demetrius Andre's ilk will fight for that little money. I really don't think so. Sector Roblox said, I want to stay positive and say Crawford versus Spence happens, but if it doesn't happen, it'll be a big L in boxing history. Yeah, absolutely. I don't even have anything to add to that. That is absolutely the case. It would just be super unfortunate. They really need to get that done. Let's see. Brendan Jackson said all he had to do was fight Janibek. You know, like right now, at this time, yes, that seems like it would have been a better move to make for Demetrius Andre. Yes, it is a super difficult fight, at least seemingly. Like Janibek seems like he's a very good fighter, and I forgot who Janibek will now be fighting in his first title defense, because they basically elevated his lower title status to being an actual champion for the WBO. No, is it the WBO? It might be the WBO. Yeah, I think he's now the WBO champion, Janibek Alimkhanuly. So he's got a title defense scheduled now. It's against Denzel Bentley, whose only loss, I want to say, is to Felix Cash. You really have to be a boxing hardcore to know those names. Denzel Bentley and Felix Cash. But Felix Cash beat Denzel Bentley via knockout. But Denzel Bentley, he's a pretty decent fighter. I don't think he's going to beat Janibek, but that's going to be Janibek's first title defense. Louis Isaacs Boxing, pro boxer. My bad. Wow. Welcome. We got a pro boxer in the house. Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming through. Absolutely. And I will do my homework. Yeah, thank you for coming through. MAW said, we just saw Andrade as a free agent. Yeah, he doesn't have drawing power. That's why one person showed up to his purse bid, right? His best bet is to approach PBC or Top Rank if the zone doesn't want him. See, I think that Eddie Hearn seems to be a pretty forgiving person. I think Eddie Hearn would take him back. And I think Eddie Hearn tried to give Demetrius Andre meaningful fights. But yeah, Andre should have been on PBC a long time ago. Since that, they at least had, the Charlo brothers, right? So a lot of his decisions just haven't worked out with, he went with Rock Nation with Jay-Z's brand for a minute. Usually trying to do something like super outside of the box, except for rare cases, it usually doesn't work out for the fighter. I mean, with the boxing architecture, things are built the way they are for a reason. And they still stand in that way for a reason. So who knows? Maybe a Pro Bellum could shake things up. But we've seen a lot of, Matchroom and DAZN have kind of shaken things up a bit, but now they are kind of lumped in as just another major promoter, right? So I feel like, yeah, Demetrius Andre kind of needs to pick a side because he's not a fighter with Canelo type pull. It makes sense for a Canelo to go free agent because you're the one calling the shots and everybody wants to fight you anyway. So it's like, take your pick. But if you're in the position of Demetrius Andre, yeah, ill-advised. Let's see. And Julius Armstrong, I forgot to shout you out, but thank you for coming through. Growth through calisthenics. Yeah, Andre seems to have the wrong people in his corner. Yeah, if by people you mean advisors, absolutely. I agree with that. And it's sad. It's a disservice to him. It's interesting because he has a pretty a fun personality. Like if you see him in interviews, he's humorous. He could fight. He's a very, very good fighter. And I really believe that he wants to fight other very, very good fighters. And I remember, I've been wanting to see him fight the tops for like the past 8 years, it seems. It's been a very long and frustrating process just to witness his career playing out in the way that it has. Let's see. Another piece of news. Sonny Edwards, IBF, I think he's like at 115. Yeah, he's at 112. That's the weight class that Bam Rodriguez went from to fight Carlos Cuadras and then Sarisa Katsor Rungvisai. But in that lower, I think it's flyweight, Sonny Edwards is the IBF champ. His next title defense is going to be on November 11th against Felix Alvarado. Decent fight. There are other fighters like Martinez who just tried to go up and fight Chocolatito, who Sonny Edwards probably should be fighting. But yeah, that's not a bad title defense. Kell Brook might make a return. his trainer and a lot of people, Kid Galahad's trainer, basically just said that he might return against Liam Smith, who's had a very good, basically post-fighting Canelo career. Remember when Liam Smith, not Callum Smith, his brother, but the older brother, I believe, Liam Smith, fought Canelo, lost via stoppage, got brutalized to the body. He's actually had a very good career since. Kell Brook might return against either Liam Smith or against the winner of Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. So Kell Brook, he's one of my favorite fighters over the past 10 years. And I really, I felt kind of bad for him when he had those back-to-backs against Triple G, which that was a very ballsy move. Like, he had guts going up 2 divisions, which is super ill-advised, which is another reason I don't love this Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn fight, by the way. But he went 2 divisions up to fight Triple G. Then he came way back down to 147 to defend his IBF belt against Errol Spence Jr., a young and hungry Errol Spence Jr. And that was a great fight. Kell Brook was stealing on Errol Spence like a lot in the first half of the fight, but Errol Spence took over, stopped Kell Brook. Kell Brook's never been the same since. And I kind of want him to just retire after that fight against Amir Khan. 2 guys who probably should be retired. Yes, it is going to be a question of like what if in terms of Kell Brook and what if he fulfilled his actual abilities, right? But yeah, he looks like if he does return to the ring, it's going to be a pretty lucrative fight, either against Liam Smith or the Eubank versus Benn winner. So we'll keep our eye on that. And yeah, his trainer, if you guys didn't know, Dominic Ingle, a very good trainer, is the one who pretty much mentioned that Kell Brook was considering that. I agree with you, MAW. Kell should probably stay retired. Yeah, Brendan Jackson says Sonny Edwards versus Julio Cesar Martinez would be nice. I agree. So let's see. Brendan Jackson said Bentley is ranked 14th among the WBO's 160-pound contenders. That's ridiculous that he should be the first title defense for Janibek. That's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, let's get into recapping a little bit of what we saw over the last weekend. What the hell was that between Joyce and Joseph Parker? Like, I've got a lot of respect for Joseph Parker. Yes, it's been frustrating seeing him play Mr. Nice Guy, and us feeling like we don't get the full juice out of the squeeze from Joseph Parker, given how well he moves, how quick his hands are, how much of an athlete he appears to be. Joyce just seems to be like, first of all, he weighed in at 271 pounds, all right? Not 250, not 260. And keep in mind, if you are above 200 pounds, you are technically a heavyweight. Yes, you could fight, in the bridgerweight if you want to under the WBC banner between 200 pounds and 225 pounds. But think about that gap. Like, if you're coming in, like Joseph Parker, when he was like lighter, he used to come into fights like at 235 or something. He was just in there with a 270-pound Joyce, nicknamed the Juggernaut. And yes, it is so appropriate. Like, I struggle to find a more appropriate nickname than Juggernaut. Juggernaut, if you don't remember, like, he was an X-Men Marvel figure where anything that strikes him just makes him stronger. And then so he just starts picking up steam and just blitzing through anything in his path and is able to pretty much withstand anything. Joyce, we've seen him fight, Daniel Dubois. We recently saw him fight Christian Hammer. Before that, he stopped Carlos Takam. He's knocked out all of his opponents, with the exception of only Bryant Jennings is the only fighter who brought him the distance. But, I picked Joseph Parker to win this one via close decision. But boy, was I wrong. And, like, I don't want to... It's almost unbelievable, the skill set that we're seeing. How are you throwing 80-plus punches in like the 9th round and the 10th round and being able to take straight right hands, clean straight right hands from Joseph Parker? And, I laughed during the broadcast. I said this on my post-fight, but I said that, I had laughed when I was watching the broadcast. The commentator said, Joyce appears unconcerned after getting hit by Joseph Parker. He's, and he's just saying it, calling the play-by-play, saying Joseph Parker lands a nice right hand, and Joe Joyce appears unconcerned. And I laughed because he did seem unconcerned. MAW said he picked Joseph Parker too. Yeah, Joe Joyce, like, he's a very hard puncher, so I think that he hits harder than most heavyweights. Like, he's knocked out all but one of his opponents. But it's got to be mentally exhausting when you hit Joe Joyce with what looks like a perfect punch, and like within 1 second, Joe Joyce, even at awkward angles, like when Joe Joyce even looks off balance, he's still throwing like weird looking left hands, like hooks, and then he'll just throw like, it looks slow. Like on TV, it looks slow. Like it looks like he's like leaning over, throwing like an overhand right that's like, huh. But it's like, if you're throwing 60 to 80 of those every round and you are unconcerned about whatever the opponent is throwing at you, and by the way, yes, he might look like he has slow hands, but his feet aren't that slow. Like, if you look at the way he laterally cuts the ring off, like Joseph Parker, again, a good mover, and Parker came into this fight heavy. He was 250, or roughly 250 pounds. So Joseph Parker will try to hit him and get on his bike and move laterally, but then Joe Joyce will step with him laterally. So he's right in front of him again, throwing those clubbing shots. And it's weird because Joseph Parker did win a couple rounds, maybe three rounds, or maybe even 4 rounds. I don't know, but it felt like it didn't matter. It felt like there's no, like, you could run, but you can't hide. There's nowhere to go. And you saw the stress on a otherwise very not stressed out looking fighter in Joseph Parker. He usually looks very calm, and I've seen him go 12 rounds with Anthony Joshua. He went 12 rounds with Dillian Whyte. I saw him get dropped by Dillian Whyte twice and look more okay than he looked in this fight against Joe Joyce. Like, this looked like it was a nightmare. And it's like Joseph Parker, he was bleeding by like the second or third round. He got stunned by a couple jabs in like the first round, which I'm like, wait a second. But it seemed clear by like the second or third round that, Joseph Parker might get stopped here, which, Joe Joyce did to Joseph Parker what nobody has done to Joseph Parker in stopping him. But it became, so he'll jab, and then you could like hit him with a power punch. Then he'll get right back onto the jab, throw the right hand, throw the left hook. And you saw Joseph Parker, when he started getting desperate, he started throwing quadruple left hand hooks. Like, he'll go like, as he's like lunging forwards, like anything it takes to get this guy off of me, and it still wouldn't work. Joe Joyce would be right back, right in front of him, throwing more punches. Again, a 270-pounder who doesn't appear to get hurt by anything. Like, there was no visible sign of Joe Joyce, like, giving the body language that, hey, I can't take too many of those. Nothing like that indicating any danger for Joe Joyce. Joseph Parker, on the other hand, looked stressed out by the second or third round. And the fact that he was able to knocked Joseph Parker out with the left hook. And Joseph Parker got hit by a bunch of left hooks in this fight. But he didn't see that left hook, right? And so Joseph Parker, who was just exhausted by this point, gets hit with the punch, and he fell with nothing to break his fall. He just looked like a bag of weight that was just being dropped. And you saw the way that his shoulder hit, and then his neck and head kind of just did that whole, it was just weightless, right? Where it's just nothing but gravity at work. And that was a little bit jarring to see somebody as good as Joseph Parker get knocked out. And first of all, knocked out dramatically, but getting beaten up so badly before the knockout. It's like the worst of both worlds, right? You sustain the big beating, doing everything you can to survive and to try to hit, try to steal rounds, anything that might work, and you still end up getting knocked out. And I don't mean like knocked out where the ref jumps in to help you out or somebody throws a towel in, but you get knocked out where you just sink to the floor. And to Joseph Parker's credit, he had the wherewithal to try to get back up and try to steady himself, but that fight was rightfully called off. And yeah, again, that was kind of tough to watch. And it begs the question, who at heavyweight can handle Joe Joyce. Like, I started like kind of theorizing, like thinking about who matchups wise and style wise might be good. Like, I was thinking, well, how about the guy who's who he's a mandatory for, Alexander Usyk, who just went 24 rounds with Anthony Joshua and beat him twice. They fought as semi-pros when, it wasn't like 10 rounds or 12 rounds, but they didn't wear any any headgear. So this is after Joe Joyce won the silver medal at the 2012 Olympics. I think 2012 or 2016 Olympics. I want to say the 2016 Olympics because Anthony Joshua won the gold at 2012. Yeah, so Tony Yoka won the gold medal at the 2016 Olympics and Joe Joyce won the silver. So, controversially, by the way, most believe Joe Joyce should have been the gold medalist at the 2016 Olympics. But Joe Joyce against Alexander Usyk, I'm thinking about it, and you could, the film of them is on YouTube in their semi-pro match. First of all, Alexander Usyk is 35 years old. Joe Joyce is 37. Joseph Parker's still only 30 years old. So what we just witnessed, that was a 37-year-old putting that beating on a 30-year-old. But, Alexander Usyk is going to be giving up like 50 pounds to this guy. And this isn't the same Joe Joyce that fought Usyk like several years ago. If you watch the way that Joyce moves, and if you watch his body type, he looked a lot leaner back in the day. He wasn't 255 pounds, let alone 270 pounds. So this is a totally different Joe Joyce. My early thoughts, I think I might favor Joe Joyce over Alexander Usyk. And again, styles make fights. So with Deontay Wilder, I'm a little less sure because Joe Joyce does get hit by just about everybody he fights. Like, when I was watching Joe Joyce fight Carlos Takam, I was seeing Carlos Takam blast Joe Joyce with these overhand rights, and Joe Joyce would just do his, like, keep on coming forward thing. But I'm like, ooh, that style's not going to age well. You're going to hit cleanly by these overhand rights. But then we see what he just did with Joseph Parker. So, again, I'm not so sure against Usyk. I think I would favor Joe Joyce. Depending on what Deontay Wilder looks like when he comes back against Robert Helenius, I might still favor the Bronze Bomber, believe it or not, over Joe Joyce. Unless Deontay Wilder can't hurt Joyce, which it's an open question. Look, I've read reports and I've heard commentary that reported that Joe Joyce, when he would, like, in terms of bone density, has thicker bones than other people. If that's the case, all bets are off. But put it like this. I think I would favor Joe Joyce over Anthony Joshua because in that fight, you have one guy who doesn't mind getting hit versus another guy who doesn't like getting hit. So what happens if a fight breaks out, right? You've got one guy, again, who doesn't want to get hit against another guy who doesn't mind getting hit. As powerful as AJ is and as skilled as AJ is, I think I would favor Joe Joyce against Anthony Joshua, at least at this stage. Like, that performance, that is must watch for for boxing fans, especially, for the heavyweight division, Joyce versus Parker. That was one of the performances of the year. Like, seriously. Yeah, you really have to consider Joyce's knockout of Joseph Parker as one of the performances of the year. Let's see. Brendan Jackson has Usyk beating Joyce by decision or stopping him. Interesting. Jay Foreman said his defense needs to be worked on, though. His best defense is his offense and his chin. Joyce is entertaining and fun to watch. So, yeah, his defense, but it seems like Joe Joyce is so aware of what he's good at and what he's not good at. And it seems like he's like, yeah, I don't have fast hands, but if I put enough volume on them, there's no way that they could withstand my pressure, especially when they realize that they can't hurt me. But yeah, against like the true power punchers, like, Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, it might work against them, especially because he doesn't have fast hands. Deontay Wilder is able to let go of that right hand pretty damn quickly. But again, we'll have to see what Deontay Wilder looks like with his return to the ring. Growth Through Calisthenics says, I'd favor Wilder over Joyce. I think I would favor Joe Joyce over Andy Ruiz. I think I would. I'm not sure of about Tyson Fury. It's funny what Tyson Fury said. He said, Joe Joyce did this and, did this and did this. And he was complimentary of Joe Joyce, but then he went on to say, but that guy couldn't hit me with a bag of rice or something like that. Brendan Jackson said, Joe Joyce could mess around and jab Wilder's face off of his skull if he isn't put away early. Yeah, that could be a very, very bad night for Wilder if Wilder can't hurt Joe Joyce, preferably in the first few rounds. Like, put it like this, Wilder can't take 7 rounds to get cooking with that one punch in the way that he did against Luis Ortiz in the rematch. But, Luis Ortiz and Joe Joyce are so different. Luis Ortiz is a much more of a sweet science guy. He's a southpaw, way more crafty, right? Joe Joyce is pretty much trying to put it on you from the first round on. So I feel like Wilder would certainly have opportunities to connect cleanly with Joe Joyce in a way that he might not against Luis Ortiz. Let's see. Oh, thank you, MAW. Hit that like, y'all. Thank you. Yeah, Joyce's consistent jab could trouble most heavyweights, especially if he lands. Brendan Jackson said, give Usyk 12 rounds instead of 5 to land flush combinations on Usyk, you probably meant of Joyce, like he did on the World Series of Boxing, and then he could very well TKO Joyce. I mean, well, okay, so if he's landing cleanly, it depends on how resilient. Here's the thing. Can you put Alexander Usyk on the treadmill from hell, essentially? Because I think that Joyce's movement is more pressure-based than it used to be. I feel like he's better at cutting the ring off and immediately going to work. And then after getting hit, cutting the ring off again. Or again, even when people are mid-exchange hitting Joyce and then they pivot and move like this, Joyce is the type who will like punch as he's turning. It looks sloppy, but he'll punch as he's turning, and it looks like a nasty just arms only punch. And he'll club you like that, but he'll club you like that to move you in that direction, so then he can hit you with a sweeping left to the. It's pummeling, right? It's a very pummeling style. Not too dissimilar from George Foreman. Their styles are different, but the type of pressure and power punching, and George Foreman did a lot more of this, trying to block punches sometimes, but it's not too dissimilar in terms of the physical and mental pressure that they're putting on their opponents, especially young George Foreman. And again, it's weird because Joe Joyce is 37 years old. Yeah, you're right. Grow through calisthenics. Joyce takes way too many flush shots. But check it out. Joseph Parker isn't a one-punch lights-out puncher, but he could punch. And he was punching Joe Joyce a lot. That's the thing. He was landing cleanly with Joyce. And, as was Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois is a knockout artist. And Joe Joyce walked him down with the jab. Ended up fracturing his face with the jab. I don't know, man. Like, Joe Joyce, remember last week we were talking about athletes, which boxers are truly athletic versus which are not athletic, and then Emmanuel Navarrete came up, and I said, no, he's not your quintessential athlete in the way that a Gary Russell Jr. with the hand speed is an athlete. Or Alexander Usyk, Vasily Lomachenko, Roy Jones Jr., athlete. But Emmanuel Navarrete is such a physical outlier in the way that he's able to apply the pressure, though with such volume, that no, he might not be your quintessential athlete, but he's built differently. And there's something going on differently about his cardiovascular system or his oxygen intake or something. I feel like Joe Joyce is such a physical outlier that no, he might not be athletic in the traditional sense. Although, if you've seen, some of Joe Joyce's post-fight celebration, this guy's doing flip cartwheels, and he could do a backflip at 260 pounds, or in his last fight he was 270 pounds. I didn't see him do the backflip after beating Parker, but I often see him do either that jumping cartwheel or the backflip. Again, 250 plus pounds. I can't say Joe Joyce is a non-athlete. Yes, he does appear to have slow hands, but there is something about him that just jumps off the page and presents absolute hell for his opponents. Karma Serene is in the house. Thank you for coming through. She said, George, who? Get out of here, man. Look, I'm not saying that he is George Foreman. George Foreman is a legend, first of all. But check it out. If Joe Joyce is able to secure a fight against either Deontay Wilder, Alexander Usyk, one of the 4 big names, Tyson Fury, somebody in the division, and is able to beat, let's say, 2 out of those 4, we'll say, elite heavyweights of the era, right, of the post-Vladimir Klitschko era, who would the top 4 heavyweights be? They would undoubtedly be Fury, Usyk, Wilder, Joshua, in any particular order, as long as you have Fury at the top. That's how I see it, as it stands. But if he beats 2 out of those 4, then can we have the Joe Joyce, George Foreman? Not comparison, but in terms of just being a dominant, destructive force in the era. I think that he's 2 big wins away. Again, nobody does that to Joseph Parker. Anthony Joshua fought a competitive 12 rounds against Joseph Parker. This fight, yes, Joseph Parker might have won a few rounds. Watching it, and, I thought Parker was going to win via close decision. It didn't feel competitive. Even when I was giving a round here or around there to Joseph Parker, I felt like the story of the fight was, damn, what's Joseph Parker going to do to get out of this alive? It was kind of like one of those feelings watching the fight. And there are not too many fighters that pressure you in a way where even when they're losing rounds, it's like, yeah, that guy's still going to win though, Jay Foreman said, you think it was smart for Parker to come in heavier? Good question. Not sure it was the smartest move, although it might not have mattered. So he came in at a 250 plus pounds instead of, sometimes he's between 235 and 245. I think that he came in thinking, I'm going to have to go to war with this guy, and I have to be able to, 1, hurt him, and I have to be able to, 2, take his punch. Well, once it became clear that he couldn't hurt Joe Joyce, that had to be a hell of a revelation, right? It's like, oh, God, what do I do now? But once that became clear, you would really like to have that, that more fleet of footness and be able to move around the ring and be able to just be able to get out of harm's way. So I think it served him well in certain ways, but maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe at 235, 240, he might have gotten stopped even earlier. But it's just, I'm just surprised that I didn't even see Joe Joyce stagger with the amount of punches Joseph Parker was trying to throw to stay competitive in the fight. LTAMTC in the house. Thank you for coming through. He said Wilder's not going to be the same after that trilogy. I think there's a strong possibility of that, and especially with the age component as well. Strong possibility that we don't see the same bronze bomber that we saw holding the WBC strap. LTAMTC also said Wilder's career is going to sink fast, in my opinion. He does not beat a top guy going forward. I think it depends on what we consider to be a top guy. For instance, if he beats, say, Andy Ruiz after this fight against Helenius, is Andy Ruiz a top guy? I look at Ruiz as being a top 6 heavyweight. It's going to be interesting to see where Ring Magazine puts Joe Joyce after that win over Parker, because before the fight, Parker was sitting, and keep in mind, they kicked Tyson Fury out of the heavyweight rankings, which means nothing. Tyson Fury is number 1 at heavyweight, right? But let's say Tyson Fury is number 1. They would have had Usyk at 2, Joshua at 3, Wilder at 4, and then Joseph Parker at 5, and then they had Joe Joyce at 8. So I feel like Joe Joyce has to be a top 5 heavyweight right now, along with Andy Ruiz. So I would have Fury. Well, that makes it tough. If you got Fury, Usyk, Joshua, Wilder, I feel like I would put Joe Joyce. Would you put Joe Joyce above Andy Ruiz with that knockout win? It's tough. It's close. But those to me would be the 5 and 6, and then Dillian White probably number 7 at this point. Let's see. Yeah, I want to thank you guys once again for showing up, showing out, and engaging in this conversation. By the way, yeah, Andy Ruiz has been underperforming for some time. I agree with you, Jay Foreman. Yeah. Brandon Jackson says, does Wilder show up to 212 like he like before? I don't think he can. Like, if you look at his body type, you know, he was built more like a young Wiz Khalifa back in the day, right? When he was a younger fighter. Now you see the muscle that he's put on, but you also see like around like the torso area. I feel like he's actually filled out. So I think that even if Wilder comes in lean, I think lean for Wilder right now is like high, I would say high 220s. I'd be surprised if Wilder could get back to 220 even. I mean, he's 6'7". You got to be pretty skinny to be coming in under 220. I just don't think Wilder at 36, 37 years old could still get there. But I do think he's going to be coming in lighter, hopefully going forward, than he was for those for the second and third fights against Tyson Fury. Because Wilder, his knockout punch is a knockout punch regardless, right? So you want to be able to move differently, and you don't want to be having to carry that muscle. He's looking like a 6'7", like Andrade-Parker, where it's just, you know, just a lot more muscular. And you see people gas out usually when they look like that. I mean, there are exceptions, but that's generally the case. But Shakur Stevenson, I thought looked great against Conceicao. Unfortunate that he missed weight. Unprofessional that he missed weight. He's going to be going to 135. And, you know, I don't think he's going to be fighting any of the guys that we want to see him fight against. At least not for these next two, not in his first two opponents at 135. One, because Devin Haney and Vasily Lomachenko and George Kambosos, they're all going to be occupied, you know, with that rematch with Haney and Kambosos, then with Lomachenko versus Ortiz, which might be more interesting than meets the eye. But every time I think that, we get a Lomachenko beatdown and brutalization of Nakatani or a beatdown of Richard Comey. So I'm gonna you know, be easy before I say, hey, maybe Jermaine Ortiz can beat Lomachenko, but I will issue a preview as I just, you know, dive deeper into analyzing that one before the fight date. But yeah, those guys are going to be tied up. So Shakur Stevenson won't be fighting Haney or Lomachenko, as far as I see it, before, you know, before September of 2023, you know? So the question is, who would Shakur Stevenson fight? If Nakatani wins his next fight, which he's had one fight since losing to Lomachenko, he won that. He's got another one scheduled, I believe, in November. If he wins that, should he be a potential opponent for Shakur Stevenson? Because, of course, we'd like to say, well, what about Tank Davis? What about Ryan Garcia? But I'm trying to be realistic and thinking, well, it's got to be a top-ranked fighter, at least for the next few fights until he's like a pay-per-view sensation, right? Then they can maybe do a cross-promotional fight. But I feel like when we're assessing who Shakur Stevenson might fight, we've got to kind of keep things in-house. I was going to say PBC-wise, like a Freudian slip. But top rank-wise, I think it's going to have to be in-house. Let's see. Growth through Calisthenics said, Wilder is the best athlete in the division. You know, in some ways I get you, but like it's hard for me to say he's a better athlete than like Alexander Usyk. I see Usyk as being a better all-around athlete. Like, first of all, I've never seen, you know, Wilder break out into a full sprint. I know he's tall as hell, right? He's got like a wide receiver type build, or maybe not even a wide receiver. Like, there are not many 6'7" wide receivers. The way I look at it, usually people's coordination, once they hit 6'4", 6'5", once they get above that, you start seeing a slow degradation in coordination. So that's what makes like Tyson Fury such an outlier. The fact that he could box like that from a skill coordination standpoint at 6'9". So Wilder's 6'7". Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you were to say, hey, Wilder, line up like he's a receiver and tell him to go for like a slant route or something, or do a hook and go or something, and then you hit him with like a 35, 45-yard pass, and Wilder like look lost as he's trying to run and navigate the ball as he's moving and his vision's going like that. To me, like, there's a lot of components that go into like athleticism, and I wouldn't be surprised if outside of the context of boxing, if Deontay Wilder didn't look super coordinated. I mean, he might. I've never seen him go out for a pass, though. I've never seen him go out and, try to dribble the ball full speed and go, and go in. And I don't mean just like pick up the ball and, of course you could dunk if you're 6'7", but I mean like grab the ball, basketball, make a move towards the basket, dribble, attack the basket and see what you could do. I've never seen him have to do anything that required him to move his feet like that. Look, I've seen Usyk line up 5 coins like Lomachenko does and basically go like that and catch all of the coins on the way down. That type of stuff impresses me. And plus, just if you look at his movement, just look at round 1 of Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk and look at Usyk's footwork in that fight. To me, that's tremendous athleticism when you are that fleet of foot. Usyk's footwork looked a little like Shakur Stevenson's footwork, and he's a heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know how good of an athlete, to be honest with you. I don't know how good Wilder is, but just because he's 6'7", that makes me a little bit skeptical how well-rounded of an athlete he is. Let's see. Yeah, you're right. Brendan Jackson, mastering boxing fundamentals does take a certain level of athleticism, but we do also see a lot of fundamentally sound boxers that don't look like athletic outliers, right? Where they might not have been able to make the college team, whatever sports, but they were able to, I don't know how far they can make it in boxing, but we've seen some, we'll say like non-tremendous athletes succeed in boxing if they learn enough skills and have enough things that you just can't coach. Like you have to be able to at least absorb a certain level of punch to even think about being a professional boxer, right? That's just a prerequisite. Some guys who are ridiculously athletic probably can't take a punch, even like a decent punch. But yeah, there are a lot of things that you have to be able to do. Cardio-wise, you have to be at a certain level to be able to box professionally. Growth Through Calisthenics said, I see what you're saying. I think coordination and athleticism are a little different. Steph Curry. See, I look at Curry as being both athletic and coordinated. No, Curry's not as athletic as... it's hard to find somebody more athletic. I mean, he is a very good athlete. And you have to look at a lot of the nuance of athleticism. But, yeah, I don't know. Allen Iverson... I mean, there are a lot more athletic guards than Steph Curry. Yeah, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, LeBron's tremendously athletic and coordinated. Jay Foreman said, what do you think about Canelo's comments about him not fighting Mexican fighters? Sounds dumb to me. So, let's see. First of all, I was not sure. First of all, I don't like the comment, period. Think about if anybody else said that, and how that would play out. Canelo is in a position of power, so he feels he can say certain things that other fighters, quite frankly, just wouldn't be able to get away with. Like, I know, like in the 19-teens, I think, or 1900s, way back in the day, over 100 years ago, I think, Jack Johnson had a certain, it said something similar. That's how far back that was, though. But imagine if, like, Josh Taylor said, I'm not going to fight any other, Scotland, it's not a huge population. But if he said, I'm not going to fight any UK fighters, meaning Britain, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, if he said that, I think people would take issue with it. If Devin Haney said, I'm not going to fight any African-American fighters, I think people would have an issue with it. I think that if David Benavidez said, I'm not going to fight any Mexican-American fighters, I think people would have a problem with it. So I don't like the comment, period, right? But from a more like technical standpoint, I don't know if Canelo meant Mexican natives who are not Mexican Americans versus anybody of Mexican descent. I think he meant only, for instance, Zurdo Gilberto Ramirez and not David Benavidez. I took that to mean that because he used words like my countrymen. I look like, he said, I represent Mexico. That's what he was saying. So I'm thinking, okay, so you're down to fight Mexican-American fighters. That's how I took it. But yeah, either way, I'm not crazy about that statement. And I don't think that it's a tool. I don't think Canelo's ducking anybody. Personally, I don't think he's ducking anybody. I don't think he's ducking Zurdo Ramirez. I don't think he's ducking David Benavidez. But he sure doesn't seem like he's in a rush to fight David Benavidez, though. And I would love to see that fight. But yeah, I guess time will tell if that includes David Benavidez. But I think he's caught enough flack where we've seen him not retract his statement, but try to elaborate on his statement in like his post-fight interview after fighting Triple G the third time. He tried to expand on it. Still didn't make like a ton of sense, but I don't think he's going to hold true to that. I don't think he's going to go the rest of his career without fighting another another Mexican native or a Mexican-American fighter. I don't think he's going to do that. Let's see. Last thing before we leave, and I hate to leave it on this note, but anybody watch... My bad. I hate to leave it on this note, but anybody watch Mayweather Asakura? Yes, it was an exhibition. Yes, a lot of people don't like exhibitions. I'm not crazy about them, although I am looking forward to Jake Paul versus Anderson the Spider Silva. But Mayweather fought a MMA fighter, scheduled 3-rounder exhibition, doesn't go on anybody's record. Asakura comes from the Rising Banner, but fought a 3-round boxing fight. You know, for the few minutes that it lasted, it was a little bit interesting. He did land flush on Floyd a couple times, and you know, I'm just watching it like, I hope you're done with this before you get yourself hurt. That's all. You know, I feel you. LTAMTC. A lot of people don't like these exhibitions. I feel you. And you know, I don't like seeing somebody who's been as great as Floyd Mayweather. Look, it's huge paydays. Like, look. Who am I to tell Floyd Mayweather, don't go out there and make however many, you know, few million or whatever million he's making in these exhibition fights? Just don't get knocked out, and don't expect me to buy the pay-per-view. Those two things aside, fine, do what you want to do. You know what I mean? Like, if it's a revenue stream that he could continue, to each their own. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I was watching this fight, and I'm thinking, as a longtime Floyd Mayweather fan, I'm watching this like, ooh, it felt like, for again just a couple minutes, it felt like Floyd in the exhibition found himself in a bit of a fight, and then in short, order, he ended up knocking him out with a straight right hand. Before that, he set it up pretty nicely, but it was a short right hand. You saw him kind of figuring things out as he does, but as his athleticism degrades, it's just going to get scarier. It's just going to get scarier and more likely that he gets himself hurt. He's 45 years old right now. But yeah, I want to thank you guys once again for coming through, and I can't wait to do this again next Tuesday. Again, there are no big fights taking place this weekend. There is a UFC card. It's a Mackenzie Dern fight, but I will be doing a Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn preview in a couple of days, and then I'll get into the following, the fights for the following weekend. Wilder, Helenius, Caleb Plant, Anthony Durrell, and so forth. So a lot to look forward to on the boxing calendar. Things start picking up, not this coming weekend, but after next weekend, things really start accelerating. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for having this, thoughtful conversation, debates, ideas, questions, all of that. LTAMTC, yeah, you said it. We were chopping it up a little bit earlier. He said instead of doing that, make a documentary, right? And release sparring footage. Could you imagine that? Like, I'm sure the Mayweather team and his family have archives of Floyd Mayweather's sparring footage. Like, I might pay a couple of dollars a month on a streaming service that plays nothing but that. Like, I'd be show the Spence against Floyd sparring footage. He's got so much, I'm sure, has so much sparring footage. Yeah, that would be interesting, but I'm sure that goes against the code of boxers, right? It's kind of I guess unethical boxing in terms of the boxing culture to talk about sparring, let alone show the footage, right? It's not seen with the, it's not looked upon favorably. I'll put it like that. But me personally, selfishly, hell yeah, I'd want to see some Floyd Mayweather sparring footage. Oh man, thank you. Growth through calisthenics. Yeah, great. Hey man, yeah, I'm definitely trying to do things. I changed like the thumbnail images, but the tech is where I'm going to be able to boost things a bit. Again, I'm trying to work in an MMA live as well. You know, back in the day, I was doing like I say back in the day, like it wasn't just like a year and a half ago. I was doing MMA previews. Haven't done those in a while. But I also want to start, a few fighters and a few people in the boxing community have kind of reached out. I wouldn't mind interviewing fighters, but see, I'm not a shill. So look, I like Brian Custer, for instance, on Showtime, but you could tell that he's like friends with all these guys. So he's not really asking hard-hitting questions, but he is giving the fighters a platform to kind of expand on their thoughts and so forth. You have other interviewers who are a little bit more hard-hitting. I don't necessarily want to be like a gotcha guy where I'm trying to like box them into a corner, but I do want to ask like thoughtful questions where we could get something from fighters that, they aren't as willing to share. But, to do that through conversation, you've got to, kind of get guys to, drop their guard essentially and be able to open up. And I think that there is an avenue to do that. So if I'm able to work that into the boxing channel, I certainly will. I also, and I mentioned this several lives ago, I kind of chop it up sometimes with other people who have boxing channels. And I don't see a lot of cross, boxing channel, chats and stuff and debates or whatever, panels or what have you. I know they have them, but not as frequently as I want to see them. Like, I want to talk on split screen with, Richard Dwyer, Boxing Wave, even some of the guys who are with the major publications. So I'm going to continue to look at ways to certainly grow the channel and to make things varied and to just kind of keep things exciting as we move forward. There's a ton going on in the boxing world. And I've also thought about different like episodes that aren't necessarily fight previews, but they're like theme based, like having like a ongoing series that more so talks about like the business of boxing. We talk about, the styles and stuff and the matchups and the fights that we are getting versus not getting, but there's a reason why we're getting what we're getting and not getting what we're not getting. So maybe certain things that talk about the business of boxing, and also just having like a series that talks only about women's boxing. I'm very interested in women's boxing. I'm about to do another preview on the, the Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall fight and Mayer versus Baumgartner. That was since rescheduled. I want to revisit that one, but I want to talk just kind of plain talk about the state of women's boxing in its various divisions. So that's a, possible series that could develop. Also, something that's from like a state of the promotional politics. I know that kind of gets a lot of eye rolls from fans who just want to see the fights that we want to see. But I do think that there is an avenue to just talk about the promotional BS that we get. A lot of the double speak that if you hear it enough, you're able to kind of decode what they say versus what they mean. So I wouldn't be opposed to doing just a series on, okay, this is what's going on PBC in these divisions, and the problem with this division is you've got this island and this island and this island, like featherweight, for instance, 126. You've got very good fighters on each one of the major platforms, and it's frustrating as hell. And, we've got roadblocks, all-out roadblocks in certain divisions with certain, promoters, like Jamal Charlo is totally holed up over there, where the PBC model doesn't work for somebody at middleweight in the way that it does at 147. So yeah, I've got my wheels turning, thinking about a lot of different ways to keep things interesting. So I'll definitely continue to flesh out some of those ideas. MAW said, please don't shill, just stay logical. Yeah, I feel you. Absolutely. Logical talk. Heck yeah. Thank you. Gordon is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Let's see. What? Oh, shoot. I'm sorry to hear that, Gordon. Grandmother fighting in the Ukraine. I'm very sorry to hear that. Growth through calisthenics. Thank you for coming through. MAW. Thank you for coming through. Gordon, praying for your family. Absolutely. Jeez. Yeah, that sounds terrible. Absolutely horrific. Yeah. Jay Foreman, thank you for coming through. And I know that's like there's no good way to segue off of that. Like, I hope she gets out of the Ukraine, really. At least for now. LTAMTC, thank you for coming through. Brendan Jackson, thank you for coming through. Karma Serene, thank you again. Yes. Jay Foreman, thank you.